There's this myth that just seems to hang around in the world of gardening, that fertility is something you have to buy. If you want a serious garden, the image is always, going to the big box store.
Right. Loading up a pickup truck.
Exactly. Loading up a pickup with 20 bags of premium cedar mulch. And you're essentially purchasing an ecosystem from scratch. It's the pay-to-play model of growing things.
It absolutely is. And that creates such a massive barrier to entry. We see so many people who look at, I don't know, a dry balcony pot or a little patch of dirt, and they just think, well, I don't have $300 in a free weekend, so I guess I can't grow anything.
Yeah, it frames it as this luxury consumption hobby.
Instead of a biological process, which is what it actually is.
But the stack of research we're diving into today argues the exact opposite. We're looking at a protocol called micro-mulching and this broader framework of climate-ready gardening. And the headline here is pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
You can totally revolutionize the biology of your soil, whether it's a huge yard or a single pot, for under $8.
And often for $0.
Yeah.
But we have to be clear, right? This isn't just about being cheap.
Yeah.
It's about being more effective. The sources argue that the whole bagged mulch approach is actually, biologically inferior to what they call hyperlocal sourcing.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, think about it. The stuff you buy in a bag has often been sterilized. Maybe it's been dyed. It's dead wood. What we're talking about today is using what you'd call trash to jumpstart a living system.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the physics and the biology of using what you currently consider waste. We're talking junk mail, Amazon boxes, even old T-shirts, to trigger this nutrient explosion in your soil.
We're moving from tidying up a garden to managing a microscopic workforce.
I like that. So we've got a guide on under $8 mulching, a technical breakdown of what they're calling 4 microbe shifts, and a protocol for climate resilience.
It's a dense stack, but the payoff it's huge.
So let's start with definitions. Because mulch, for most people, it conjures up images of those thick, uniform beds of bark chips. How is micro-mulching different from, just regular mulching?
It really comes down to scale and precision. Traditional landscaping it's broad, it's aesthetic. You're painting with a big brush to make things look tidy.
Right.
Micromulching is surgical. It's applying these thin, hyper-localized layers of repurposed materials that are specifically tailored to small spaces. Raised beds, containers. You're not trying to hide the ground. You're engineering that surface layer to interact with the plant roots right below it.
And the sourcing strategy is different, too. The sources propose something they call the 300-foot rule.
Yeah, and it's a constraint that forces creativity. Honestly, it mimics nature. The rule is you try to source every single gram of carbon you need within a 300-foot radius of the plant itself.
So like from inside your own house or apartment.
Exactly. Nature doesn't truck in cedar from 3 states away, right? It uses what falls on the ground, leaves, twigs, all that decaying matter. The goal is to close that nutrient loop right on your own property.
Okay, let's get into the inventory list, because this is where we turn the house upside down. The trash to treasure list. First up is paper and cardboard.
Right. But we do need to be a little nuanced here, because not all paper is created equal. You want shredded junk mail, and specifically the non-glossy brown paper bags, corrugated cardboard.
Okay, I have to ask about the junk mail, because I always hesitate. The inks. Are we putting toxins into the soil?
Yeah.
That seems counterintuitive if you're trying to grow food.
That's a super common concern, and, 20 years ago it was a valid one. But most modern newsprint and standard junk mail now use soy-based inks. They're generally safe for composting. The bacteria actually break them down pretty easily.
Right.
The red flag you need to watch for is that glossy magazine-style paper, that clay coating, the plasticized finish that doesn't break down well. It can leave residues. But standard envelopes, bills, and crucially, all those Amazon boxes piling up.
Gold mines.
Yeah.
High-carbon gold mines.
You just have to remember to strip the plastic tape off first.
Exactly. Once you strip the tape and tread that stuff, or even just tear it by hand, you've got a carbon source that basically mimics the leaf litter on a forest floor. It gives it structure.
The next category on the list really caught me off guard. Fabric. The source talks about a fabric patch mulch using old clothes. How does that work without looking like you just threw your laundry on the garden?
So this is specifically for container gardening. For pots, that's where moisture loss is the absolute enemy.
Oh, they dry out so fast.
The protocol suggests taking old T-shirts, pillowcases, and cutting them into strips or rings. And you just lay this fabric right on the soil surface of a pot.
But why fabric? Why not just use more of the shredded paper in there? It's about water retention physics. Cotton is a hydrophilic organic material. It loves water. In a small pot on a hot balcony, paper might just dry out, get brittle, and blow away.
Okay.
A wet cotton strip, though, it acts like a weighted blanket. It wicks moisture across the surface and just holds it there. It stops the soil from crusting over.
But it has to be natural fibers.
Strictly. No polyester blends. Synthetics are basically plastic. They won't decompose, and they'll eventually shed microplastics into your soil. It has to be 100% cotton, wool, linen. You look at the tag. If it says polyblend, it goes in the trash, not the garden.
Got it. Then we have the usual kitchen and yard waste. Coffee grounds, of course, but also tea leaves and dried grass clippings. But there's a huge warning label on the grass clippings in the source.
There is. This is where beginners often create a complete disaster.
How?
Fresh grass is super high in nitrogen and water. If you pile it on thick, like 3 or 4 inches, it goes anaerobic. It turns into this slimy, smelly mat that blocks all the air from reaching the soil. It effectively suffocates the soil life. The trick is dusting. Just thin layers that can dry out and break down aerobically. You want it to look like hay, not silage.
And finally, wood scraps. But not big wood chips. We're talking sawdust and little twigs.
Yeah, and we'll get into the specifics of the stick lattice later on. But yes, the whole idea is that you have all these materials, carbon from the paper, nitrogen from the grass, already in your house.
The source actually breaks down the math on this. If you raid the recycling bin, the laundry hamper, your material cost is 0. The only projected costs are maybe, some twine or a better pair of scissors?
It puts the total project cost at under $8. But the value proposition isn't just saving money. It's about what happens after you lay this stuff down. The free part is great, but the biological response? That's the real story.
Okay, let's pivot to that, the biological response. This is the part of the research I found most compelling, because we tend to think of mulch as inert, just a blanket we throw on the bed.
Right.
But the sources describe it as a buffet, that we're actually triggering a biological sequence.
It's a timeline. The sources identify these 4 microbe shifts that happen within the first 30 days of doing this. You're basically managing a succession of biological events. You're not just letting it rot. You are feeding a workforce.
Okay, let's walk through these. This is what moves you from just being a gardener to an ecosystem manager. Shift number 1 happens in the first week or 2, the bacterial surge.
This is the sugar rush. Bacteria are the first responders. They're small, they're fast, and they go for the easy carbohydrates in the leaves or the paper. As they consume that carbon, they multiply like crazy.
And this isn't invisible, is it? The source says you can actually see the soil structure change.
You can. The soil surface stops looking so dusty and tight. It starts to look darker, more granular, almost like coffee grounds. That's the bacteria gluing soil particles together with their secretions. They're creating aggregates, which improves aeration.
Then we hit week 2 to 3. Shift number 2, the fungal networks. This is where the average person usually freaks out.
Correct. You lift up a piece of that damp cardboard and you see these white, fuzzy threads, and the instinct is mold. It's diseased. I need to spray it with something.
But that's a success indicator here.
It's vital. Those threads are hyphae. If bacteria are the cooks in the kitchen, fungi are the logistics network. They transport nutrients and water from where they are to where they're needed. They bridge gaps bacteria can't. If you see those white webs, you've built the infrastructure for nutrient transport.
So don't scrape it off.
Never. You're destroying the highway system. That fungal network effectively extends the reach of your plant's roots by hundreds of times.
Okay. Shift #3 overlaps with this. Moisture and temperature stability. This is less biological, more physical.
It's thermodynamics. Bare soil swings wildly in temperature. It bakes in the sun, freezes at night. Microbes are temperamental. They crash when the temperature swings too hard. So that mulch layer creates a buffered microclimate. It just flattens the curve of that fluctuation.
Which means the plants aren't stressing as much. They're not diverting energy just to survive.
Exactly. A plant in stable soil is a calm plant. A calm plant grows fruit.
And finally, around week 4, you get shift #4. Nutrient cycling.
This is the payoff. This is when the system flips from consuming to releasing. The microbes have eaten the mulch, they've lived their lives, and as they die and decompose, or as they excrete waste, they release plant-available nutrients.
And the key difference here compared to, say, Miracle-Gro or some synthetic fertilizer is the delivery mechanism.
Right. Synthetics are like a shot of caffeine. Immediate, high intensity, and then a potential crash. The microbial release is a slow drip IV. It matches the plant's uptake capacity almost perfectly. You rarely get fertilizer burn from this because the biology itself regulates the speed of release.
So effectively, by shredding your junk mail, you've hired a microscopic workforce to fertilize your plants for you.
Precisely. You've outsourced the labor to the bacteria and the fungi?
However, biology is messy. You can mess this up. The sources list several mulch misfires. The first one they call the volcano.
A classic mistake. We see this in professional landscaping all the time, sadly. Piling mulch way up high against the stem of a tree or a tomato plant. It looks like a little mountain.
Why is that a problem? It seems like it would protect the stem.
But the stem has to breathe. Gas exchange happens there. If you bury it in moist, rotting material, the bark softens, and you invite rot and pathogens directly into the vascular system of the plant. You want a donut shape, not a volcano. Always leave a little collar of air around the stem so it stays dry.
Then there's this concept of nitrogen robbery, which sounds pretty dramatic.
It is. It's all about carbon to nitrogen ratios. So we mentioned sawdust earlier. Sawdust is almost pure carbon. If you mix that sawdust into the soil, you till it, and the bacteria get so excited by that massive carbon buffet that they need huge amounts of nitrogen to build their bodies to process it.
And where do they get that nitrogen?
They pull it from the soil, effectively stealing it from your plants.
So your plants turn yellow and stop growing.
Right, but, and this is the absolute key, this only happens if you bury the sawdust. If you just lay it on top as a mulch, the interaction only happens at the soil surface. The roots down below are fine. So the rule is, high carbon materials go on the soil, not in the soil.
Now I want to pivot to a section of the source material that takes a bit of a contrarian view. The headline is, Why You Should Stop Mulching Your Entire Garden.
I really appreciate this source because mulch everything has kind of become a dogma. This argues for strategic timing.
Specifically regarding early spring and heat-loving crops like peppers and tomatoes.
Exactly. Think about insulation. A cooler keeps your drinks cold, but it also keeps warm things warm. Mulch is an insulator. If your soil is cold and wet from the winter and you put a thick layer of mulch on it in March,
You're locking the cold in.
you're locking the cold and you're delaying the soil warming up.
And for a pepper plant that craves heat, that's a disaster.
It'll stunt them. So the contrarian strategy is leave the soil bare for the first few weeks of spring. Let the sun hit the dark soil, warm it up, wake everything up. Then, once the soil temperature is up, you apply the mulch to lock that heat in.
That is a crucial nuance. It's not always mulch. It's mulch when the thermal conditions are right.
Precisely. It's about understanding the function, not just following a rule.
Let's look at the urban context for a second. The sources have a dedicated section for mulching for patio pots. We talked about the fabric strips, but there's also something called the cardboard collar.
This addresses the unique physics of a pot. A pot is exposed to air on all sides. It dries out exponentially faster than the ground. So the cardboard collar is simple. You cut a circle of cardboard that fits the pot, cut a slit to the center, and you just slide it around the stem of the plant.
So it's basically a little lid for the pot.
It acts as an evaporation shield, but it also serves a second function in a city: weed blocking. Weed seeds blow in on the wind. If you have a physical barrier, they can't land on the soil and germinate. It creates a closed system.
This all leads us into the broader context of the sources. Climate-ready gardening. This feels like a shift in philosophy. We aren't just gardening for aesthetics anymore. We're gardening for resilience.
It's a defensive strategy. The weather is getting weirder, hotter, wetter, more unpredictable. The source has outlined 3 pillars of resilience to handle that. The first one is soil as armor.
Which goes right back to that sponge texture we talked about with the bacteria.
Right. Unmulched, dry soil becomes hydrophobic. It actually repels water. So when you get a massive downpour, the water just sheets off and causes erosion. It's like pouring water on concrete.
But mulched soil is different.
Mulched, biologically active soil is a sponge. It absorbs the hydraulic shock of a storm.
Pillar 2 is water smarter. And the stat here is pretty significant. Mulch can reduce watering needs by 30 to 50%.
In a world of increasing drought and rising water costs, that is a massive efficiency gain. You're sealing the leaks in the system.
The third pillar is fascinating because it changes how we garden. It's called event-based mulching.
Yeah, this treats mulch like storm shutters. Usually people mulch once a season and forget about it. Event-based mulching says, check the forecast. Is there a heat dome coming? Is a torrential storm predicted?
And if there is, you react.
You go out 48 hours before and you add a fresh sacrificial layer. You beef up the insulation before the heat hits, or you add a coarse layer to break the impact of the rain. You're actively buffering the system against a specific shock event.
One specific technique for heat waves they mention is the stick lattice method. This sounded almost too simple to work.
It's low-tech biomimicry. You just take small twigs and sticks, the stuff you'd normally clean up, and cross them over the soil surface in a messy pattern.
And what does that achieve that a layer of leaves doesn't?
Airflow and shade. A dense mat of leaves might actually trap too much heat if it's 100 degrees out. A stick lattice creates partial shade, about 30 to 50% shade on the soil, while still allowing heat to escape. It breaks the intensity of the sun without sealing the soil.
It's a parasol for the microbes.
That's a great way to put it. It keeps the root zone significantly cooler without suffocating it. It's just mechanics, not chemistry.
So we've effectively dismantled the idea that you need a pickup truck and a credit card to have a healthy garden. We've raided the recycling bin for carbon, used old clothes for moisture retention, and engineered a microbial workforce to handle all the nutrient delivery.
We've turned the garden from a passive display into an active, resilient biosystem.
I want to zoom out for a second for our final thought. The source leaves us with this concept called micro-actions with macro impact. It challenges you, the listener, to think about the aggregate effect of all this.
It's the urban heat island effect. Cities are hot because concrete absorbs heat and there's no moisture evaporation to cool the air.
So if you imagine every balcony pot, every median strip, every little backyard in a city practicing this kind of micro-mulching,
Yeah.
holding on to that water.
You are effectively creating a distributed cooling system. Plants transpire, they release water vapor, which cools the air. If you keep the soil moist enough for plants to do that efficiently across an entire neighborhood, you can theoretically lower the ambient temperature.
That's a really powerful reframing. You're not just trying to keep your basil alive, you're acting as a biological buffer for your concrete neighborhood.
Agency is the antidote to climate anxiety. You can't fix the whole planet, but you can absolutely fix the square footage under your control. And you can do it with a cardboard box.
So, before you throw that junk mail in the recycling bin, take a second look. It might be the start of a revolution. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.